It's showtime, folks.
Well, it was an interesting day yesterday. I visited the headquarters for the Theosophical Society of America in Wheaton, Illinois, and it was really cool. It was a really cool spot. It's essentially it's a brick building. It kind of looks like, it reminds me of an episode of Supernatural. I can't remember which one, but I remember what happens in the episode. There's this, it's kind of like this old brick house, like red, darkish red brick, depending on the section or how well tended the portion of the house was. And then anyway, some girl in the episode drowned or almost drowned from some spirit or whatever, from my recollection. Good episode. But anyway, I went there, and it's essentially a giant library, like it's at least what you can visit during their usual visitation hours. Like it's a pretty cool library. And so anyway, while I was there, I got a hold of these pamphlets, which are pretty cool. There's a bunch of different stuff, like reincarnation, behind their emblem or logo, which is pretty interesting, about Helena Blavatsky and her secret doctrine, Theosophy and how it relates to science, and life, death, and the beyond. Pretty cool. So anyway, the library is the Henry S. Olcott Library, and it's chock full of theosophical journals, pamphlets, and mystically perceived philosophical works from Blavatsky to nonfiction to Hindu and Zoroastrian literature. And in my browsing, I was led to focus a good amount on a few different publications. The most interesting of available material to me so far seems to be this 4-volume collection, which archives a collaborative journal publication called The Lightbearer, from which was around from about 1993 up until 2008. And flipping through it, it would seem largely Buddhist-leaning streams of thought, with some lacing of possibly syncretic Gnosticism, which isn't all that uncommon, but it's interesting with its titling, as in general context, such a name for a publication would seemingly imply a Luciferian or Promethean ideal, and which is present throughout Theosophy and Blavatsky's doctrine in of itself, with the string of, if you look into Blavatsky, I don't want to explain too much because that gets away from my point here. And with comparative analysis is sensible, and a pipeline or connection with something like Satanism or adjacent thought is evident with this idea of enlightenment, especially with the Buddhist thing, because in a literal sense, the Satanism stuff is the closest the West, or especially America, can ever get to something like Buddhism. Like, it's the closest it can ever get to something or similar strains. And many satanically inclined identifiers, they grow up, or so to say, and move away from the one end of philosophical views of attaining that enlightenment for a bettered existence, or just one does it. Satan does it through indulgence, while in exploring those desires and curiosities that come about naturally and as time goes on for self-preservation. Buddhism has views a negation of those desires as a means of attaining enlightenment. Just view monks, like compare a Buddhist monk to fucking Marilyn Manson, because he's a Satanist and shit. And there's a lot of similarities, true, there are, but there's also not, because one's, you know, I mean, just compare the two. Anyway, it's from one end of desire to another. Just Theosophy and the journals themselves have a more Eastern outlook spiced with Gnostic connotations, which makes sense, because, like, if you look at the ones, the people from the more satanic vein of things, someone like Xena, and her former husband Nicholas, Xena LaVey and Nicholas Schreck, denouncing the more diabolical derived past, and they absolutely did, especially because I've tried to email Xena before. Anyway, and because they went into Buddhism with some Gnostic lacings, especially Nicholas Schreck. He talks about he talks about Gnosticism a good amount and how it correlates with his thought. And I think he's doing something with the concept of Abraxas. I'm not sure, but that really gets into the other one, which is Boyd Rice, who moved into a sort of holy blood, holy grail style Gnostic pseudo-archaeology. I mean, listen to him on Bob Larson talk about how he's possibly a not a long lost, but a great grand descendant of Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ. Because there's a theory that Jesus got married and had a family and children. There's a whole there's a whole genre of literature dedicated to this topic. It's absolutely fascinating to read, because it's downright heretical in a sense, because it goes against, like, it fills in a lot of gaps that people have to ask, like, well, what the fuck happened to Jesus and stuff after all this stuff, because, like, did he, like, where did he go if he's the son of God? Yeah, yada yada yada. It's like all this shit, and it really makes it it really makes it more occult in a way, but it's also very pseudo-archaeological, in the same sense something like Agartha is. And from the first flip of these journals, one bit, I found a bit in there that was interesting, but I don't care to read it. Then, this kind of also goes to the Agartha thing. I found a small hardcover pamphlet that was the text of the next text of Captivation. It's a theosophical view of human races, and it's a brief, syncretic and largely symbolic in its posit regarding the idea of races and their origins. And it goes about it in a certain historical and philosophical combining of mythos, like Atlantis, Hyperborea, Aryan, and then it starts coming up with a hypothesized coming or developing one, the American, to mention a few. And rather than rather than very ethnological determination as with breeding, because it's ever evolving, because people are constantly breeding and having more children. Even doesn't matter the birth rates, there's still people having children and stuff, and that creates a new person, and there's changes in all that. So evolution doesn't ever fucking stop. It might stagnate, but it doesn't stop. If it stops, that's called extinction. Like, if your species is no longer evolving, that's called a flatline. If your heart's not beating, if your blood is not pumping, if you are not aging, you are dead. Anyway, it's in this short, and then I guess I sort of found it kind of interesting because in one of the bits it sort of has something of which I find to lend to Mark Fisher's conception of what he called disidentity politics. And I don't really care, like, honestly, I don't care to read all the shit that I wrote down for this because it's a lot. Like, I took the pictures. You know what, I'll just put the pictures on archive.org as a trip thing or something. Anyway, it's like, blog, there we go. Blogarchive.org, whatever the fuck. Anyway, it's like, I find the whole thing with a bit more scrutiny as it sort of leans into spirituality and a more totalized view of compassion, but how much it's different verbiage aside and reapplied, it would truly overlap with Fisher's concept in the fluid form taken as method to denunciate the dissatisfying class factory apparatus, though not with that exact new revolutionary passive action as Fisher's sort of promotes. It's more a spiritual compassion and activism, as it's reminding in the Theosophical vein of a personal omnipotence, elevated consciousness, enlightenment. And Fisher's would be politically awoken and sort of extremely colored with more of a depression, while Blavatsky's concept is a lot more uplifting. Because, Fisher's philosophy is depressing. It really is. I mean, he himself killed himself. So it is quite a depressive posit. But, it's just a difference in, interpretation of the world. And Fisher was, in a sense, he was haunted by his own ghosts. So, that was what I found at the Theosophical Society when I went there. I'm probably going to go back soon to see the Lightbearer journals a lot more, because I want to really go through those, because it's such an interesting title, and it's so interesting to see that it's all like Buddhist with Gnostic-laced syncretism, like texts or whatever. Mystical explanation would explain it. Oh wait, theosophy. Anyway, yeah.